For example, the groundwater production in the ancient India is based on understanding or presence of certain features. For example, there is an ant hill. Nearby that, if you have a jujube tree or the badari, if you have, then that means there is a water, plenty of water is available at certain depth. So that is what is mentioned in Bharat Samhita by Varahamihira. So Varahamihira actually has compiled a huge volume of text where from different sources he mentions what is the knowledge that is available from different sources, right? So, and similarly, if you have seen a frog near any tree, and near that you have water bodies, and there are certain other pramanas that have been given. So similarly, the presence of certain plant varieties also provide you information about presence of groundwater. Sanangpur Dam is situated near Delhi in Faridabad, and you have this Aravalli mountains. Near foot of the Aravalli mountains, you have this particular dam that has been created nearly 1000 years ago. The interesting aspect is that all these aspects have been considered in this. The reservoir planning, site selection, material selection, dam type, etc. Dam type is gravity dam, and where quartzite stones have been nicely chiseled and then put there. And also, this is the cross section and plane view of this particular dam. This is about more than 100 meters length, and the thickness is about 20 meter, and height is about 12 meters. This is the currently existing dam structure which is intact. These are the quartzite stones, and you have mortar as well. This mortar survived for more than 1000 years, right? So imagine a structure which was built in 1000 years ago. What is the the revenue that would have generated if the 1000 years this particular dam would have been used? So huge revenue, right? Because currently whatever the dam that is existing, beyond 100 years you will not see that particular dam exist. Prasade sadane linde dware kunde visheshata dik mode kurunashasyar. Dik has been given a very good importance in all these prasada, sadhana, etc., the creation of these spaces. And what we recently see in Anantapadmanabha Swami temple also, during the equinoxes, during the sunset, the sun passes through these 7 windows at different interval and it sets. This happens only one particular day or 2 days in 1 year, only during the equinoxes. So, first of all, I thank the organizers, especially Dr. Anjana Bhakinathan, for providing this opportunity to share some thoughts on water conservation systems of ancient India. Myself, that is Bharat, and myself Bharat from Department of Civil Engineering and also Center for Indian Knowledge Systems at IIT Guwahati. My specialization in civil engineering is geotechnical engineering, which is related to the soil, rock, and stability of land masses or landslides, mitigation, etc. But of late, I've been working on the water conservation systems of ancient India and Vastu and related subjects. So I'm very glad that I got an opportunity to talk in front of the august audience like you, and let me briefly start the presentation. So when you talk about the water resources, which is one of the prime subject under the civil engineering, which is essentially to manage and conserve the water resources, which are pretty much like lakes, rivers, oceans, aquifers, reservoirs, and groundwater, etc. Except these oceans, the freshwater resources are around 3% only. So when we talk about management, this management of this 3% of freshwater on earth, because rest is in oceans. Even now we are trying to tap those waters and then use it for drinking or something. So, and also there is another important aspect in water resources is energy generation through hydroelectric projects and other things. So pretty much this is encompassing the water resource at present. There are advanced techniques that have been developed in areas like water resource engineering, geotechnical engineering, to manage and mitigate certain problems and manage the resources, especially, for example, creation of dikes and also treatment of groundwater and many other techniques, and also detection of groundwater. So, like geophysical techniques, all such techniques are available, right? And also a creation of hydraulic structures, such as dams, reservoirs, etc. You have very nicely prepared modules that are available for creation of these large water bodies or structures. And the surveying, for example, is a very important part. Total station survey, even now, currently, I think satellite surveys are also used very commonly. And reservoir planning and design cycle assessment, these things are very, very important for creation of these large water bodies and our structures. And to detect these groundwater availability under the earth, there are geophysical techniques such as this, starting from drilling to remote sensing and many other things. So this much of advancement has taken place. Now the question arises, what kind of IKS or Indian knowledge system intervention we are looking at this particular point of view? That is what I'll try to address. So whenever you talk about water resource or any other thing, and if you combine it with environment, what we see is very often there is a conflict. So for example, this is a one hydroelectric project where I was a consultant. This is in Himachal Pradesh. This is called Coal Dam. And this particular spillway got pushed towards the water body, and this particular structure got a crack, huge crack, wide crack. And then for repair work, you see that during the dry spell, they're actually creating a dike by dumping these resources, and then water is extracted from here. And here there's a huge utilization of some certain chemicals for creation of these sealing, hydraulic sealings within the water bodies. And similarly, when you create the hydroelectric projects, this is about 44 megawatt hydroelectric project in Arunachal Pradesh. Place name is called Rupa. Again, where I've been involved, huge landslides took place. So this tunnels got blocked because of the landslide that took place around 2-3 years ago during the COVID time, and after that it triggered next year. And so such kind of environmental challenges, because the landscape is getting changed because of the creation of those water bodies. And when you talk about landslide, for example, this is the natural ground where you have a valley and then you have surface water, and you want to create certain infrastructure like road or something. So then the water bodies, when the subsurface water, when it is getting are passing through, this actually got interrupted by creation of these structures. It creates high pore pressures behind this, or it deroots and then tries to exert a pressure here. So either way, you will see that there is a stress development here or here. So which actually materializes as certain landslides or destruction due to our infrastructure or damage to our infrastructure, such as this. This is in Shillong, about less than 100 kilometers away from my place where I'm sitting right now. And sometimes this can cause catastrophic damages, something like this, catastrophic damage, something like this. This is also in Assam. The place is called Aflon. Right? So don't look at only the damages that have been created to the infrastructure, but also the landscape that got changed because of the improper engineering involvement. And also, then the water bodies are, the groundwater is actually is exorbitantly taken away by over pumping. What we see is that the streams go dry, and also the heavy metals enter into the water bodies. Because if you are going down below, naturally the certain rocks contain the heavy metals, such as arsenic, fluoride, and sometimes iron. And these heavy metals get into the waters, and it pollutes the water. So, because our main resource is groundwater, surface waters in some pockets we do use, but majorly what we are currently using is the groundwater. So if you are near oceans, the salt water intrusion also can take place if you are exploiting the groundwater significantly. This is some idea on how the one particular heavy metal called arsenic is distributed across the country and as well as in Assam region itself. A very high percentage of arsenic is currently available in many parts of this Assam, because although we have a huge water body like Brahmaputra River, most of us are dependent on the groundwater, and this groundwater is completely contaminated with heavy metals. And apart from that, the way we are treating the water bodies, such as by dumping the waste directly and creating the lakes as drains, or creation of drains, and simply discharging the effluents from industries directly into the water bodies. Because the treatment currently is like whether BOD or COD, such kind of a markers are achieved or not. If they are within the limits, you can simply throw the effluents into the water bodies. Otherwise, where do these industrial effluents go to, right? And I'm sure many of you would be aware of this particular Belandur Lake in Bangalore, where the surfactants polluted the lakes recurrently many a times. This actually recurred many a times, many years, because the surfactants from the industry directly used to enter into the Belandur Lake, and they actually created this kind of situation. So when it comes to the municipal solid waste, which is produced from the municipal solids, that supposedly go to the landfills. The Western countries, most of the Western countries have this landfill design, an engineered landfill it's called. You have a liner system which is made up of one particular soil called bentonite, and the daily waste is actually packed with a natural soil, and this is created in this manner, and finally a closure is prepared, and this is the conceptual design of a well executed engineering landfill. But the problem here is what you see whenever some new wastes are introduced, such as construction and demolition waste. It's called C&D waste. Wherever you demolish your building, that particular waste, cement or concrete, that if it is actually mixed with along with the MSW, then it releases high ionic strength salts. Then the osmotic efficiency of this particular liner or the bentonite, which is actually available there, would not contain the waste. It will simply allow the waste into the ground. So currently, this particular practice has been existing for ages or several decades. But now, currently you see that a lot of research is going in. So that means these concepts are not completely backed up by the research. They are still in the developing stages. We are still risking our environment because these contaminants are entering into your food cycle. We are still allowing because our research is not completed. Okay, this is the fact. For example, 2 years ago when the COVID pandemic has come, no one knew what has to be done with this particular viral contaminants or biomedical waste. A huge amount of biomedical waste has been created, and WHO has permitted to treat the viral waste along with municipal solid waste to dump in the municipal solid waste landfills. So, but then no research or no evidence, nothing was available. Simply the decision was taken because we do not have any other way to tackle that particular thing. Similarly, the pharmaceutical waste. Now we are encouraging the solar panels. So because that is a sustainable thing we are thinking. But when the lead is coming out of that, we do not know how to treat that. So before introducing these solar panels or something, we are not thinking of what to do with that particular lead waste. So that is how we are currently progressing. This is a hard fact. So what about the ancient approach? Here, there was a huge discussion on the hydrological cycle, and in Rigveda there is a mention of the hydrological cycle where the presence of biosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere, and the cycles of these, how the water is actually getting into the atmosphere and then again coming back. All these things have been mentioned, and the groundwater recharges, the curriculum, and in Bharat Samhita, and waste management. A lot of things have been mentioned, but here my focus is not on waste management, but rather on the water harvesting systems. So here what I showed you is that currently whatever the practices what we have, many often we see that there is a conflict with the environment. So we are actually kind of we are in a fix with how to protect the environment at the cost of development or at the cost of creation of energy or at the cost of creation of the hydroelectric projects and then from there extraction of the energy, etc. That is where we are in. So these are some of the water harvesting systems what we get to see even now because they are existing. But are there any sources to references to understand how these things have been made? Let us try to explore a bit. And even until maybe recently or few years ago, I did not know that Vastu encompasses everything. Vastu is one which actually encompasses the water resource related or science related engineering aspect, everything it encompasses into. So the etymology of Vastu is Vasa Tunu. So this is the dhatu and which indicates that the placement of Vastu or the objects. There is another meaning Vasant Pranino Yatra iti Vastu, where the living creatures exist, that is Vastu. Gruracana Vichinna Vastu Bhumihi, this is a definition in Amarkosha, and the site of habitation, and these many meanings are there. When we talk about Vastu, this is what comes into our mind. Only the creation of spaces, urban space or any other space, within our for creation of building or something. This is also a Vastu because there are devatas exist. So Amartyascha Martyascha Yatra Yatra Vasantihi Tad Vastvati Matam Tangihi iti Mayamatam. Mayamatam explains that Vastu is the where the Amartyas, Devatas, and the humans coexist together. So therefore, based on the presence of these gods or demigods, how the placement of different vastu or different rooms or creation of the spaces is actually discussed. But Vastu is a very wide subject. I'm sure before me, the speaker would have spoken from Samarangana Sutradhara because based on the brochure, I know that there's one specific talk on Samarangana Sutradhara by Bhoja. Actually, it starts from a detailed explanation of the universe creation or universe evolution. And there are so many number of questions that the Jaya asks to the creator, and then he asks what is the shape of this particular earth and how this whole creation is actually happened, and how to place, even how to create one particular soil, how to make the soil to stand without collapsing. Such kind of questions have been asked, and a very detailed treatise has been given there. And in fact, it also discusses about the mechanical contrivances or the yantras. There is a yantra adhyaya in Samarangana Sutradhara. Right? So Apart from that, there is a hydraulic structures which is not there in Samarangana Sutra very explicitly, but then the material selection, such kind of planning, such kind of things are definitely present in most of the Vastu texts. So we get to see from Harappan civilization in the Manhar River, etc., nearby that, the settlements and how this particular planning has been done, and also artistic things in many of the temples, which existed for thousands of years. But most of these the companies who advertise the paints would not last even for 10 years, right? But they existed for thousands of years on rock, and that too these are natural, organic. So Vastu is a subject matter which is existing throughout the history, and therefore which is Sanatanam, eternal, and which has a mention in Rigveda, where Vastoshpate is addressed as Vastoshpate and Anamiyo Bhava. Actually, the who provides or who bestows the health. So, if you have recalled one of the slides what I showed you, we did not really think of what happens to the health when we are discharging the effluents to the river bodies or water bodies. But here, Vastu, if it is followed, is actually to protect the health of inmates, health of all the living organisms. So that is how the Vastu has been used, and there are Pravachakas. This is mentioned in Matsya Purana. I will not detail because I think I've been given only 40 minutes or something, 45 minutes, I guess. Right? Otherwise, this is a very nice verse. Bhruvattarvasishtaiva vasishtascha vishvakarma mayastata narado nagnajichaiva vishalaksha purandara. So these are all the preachers of Vastu. Right? So there are books after them also available from them, or there are Shishya Parampara that actually came from that. And similarly, there's a mention in Ramayana in Balakanda. So very interesting aspect what I wanted to show is here, there is a mention of Sarvayantra Yudhavati Upetam. Sarvayantra Yantras. What I was mentioning some time ago, the mechanical contrivances. So for example, currently we know in Vedashalas, Vedashala is the Jantar Mantras. There are certain yantras or certain mechanical contrivances to for Veda of nakshatras, or to understand the sputa or exact position of the nakshatras or grahamandalas, etc. We have certain contrivances. Similar contrivances are also used for creation of spaces. So, for example, creation of dam requires certain surveying. So, this surveying for understanding how much space is available. So, there are certain contrivances. So all the Vastu books mentions about these mechanical contrivances. Similarly, Agni Purana has a mention of how to evaluate or how to classify the soils based on the Gandha, Rasa, etc. And similarly, Bhagavatam has a mention of the creation of Dwaraka. So these are all based on the Vastu. So these are a mention of Vastu. So Vastu encompasses the creation of spaces and also the water bodies, water resources, everything it encompasses into. So what are the general aspects of this Vastu? Intended purpose, groundwater detection or prediction, site selection, orientation, geometrical symmetry, material selection, methodology, implementation. These are all important for creation of a space. What is the perspective of water, the Jala, in ancient India? This is one of the Panchamahabhutas, of course. The Panchamahabhutas are useful for creation of all different things on earth. And there's a shloka in Bhagavad Gita also. Akashad Vayu Agni Agnirapat Prudvi. Right? The creation of these Panchamahabhutas. There's a creation of Mahat and creation of these Panchamahabhutas, and then after that creation of all different objects. That is how there is a discussion in Samarangana Sutradhara as well in the beginning. So this philosophy is very much important, and this is vital for understanding of material, understanding creation of any space. So the means of knowledge in ancient India is through these pramanas. Pramanas are this Pratyaksha Pramana, Anumana, Upamana, Ardhapatti, Anupalabdhi and Shabda. So without these Pramanas, it is very difficult to understand, to evaluate or predict anything. So at least the Pratyaksha Pramana is that, so understanding or getting a knowledge of certain thing by having a connection between this eye and that particular object. It could be eye, or it could be ear, or it could be nose, or it could be tvak, that the charma, or the skin. Through these indriyas, you actually are gaining the knowledge. But this is not sufficient, because the indriyas, when there is a when these indriyas have a direct collaboration with these particular objects, you will not gain the entire thing unless until there is an involvement of manas. Because you will be looking at something, but you will not be gaining the knowledge unless until the manas is also linked, and manas is actually is bridging this I with the object, right? So this pratyaksha pramana, these pramanas are so important to evaluate the knowledge, such as, for example, the groundwater production in the ancient India is based on understanding or presence of certain features. For example, there is an ant hill. Nearby that, if you have a jujube tree or the badari, if you have, then that means there is a water, plenty of water is available at certain depth. So that is what is mentioned in Bharat Samhita by Varahamihira. So Varahamihira actually has compiled a huge volume of text where from different sources he mentions what is the the knowledge that is available from different sources, right? So, and similarly, if you have seen a frog near any tree, and near that you have water bodies, and there are certain other pramanas that have been given. So similarly, the presence of certain plant varieties also provide you information about presence of groundwater. So although it appears that this is very simple, and does it really work, right? But in fact, there were people who used to practice. Professor Prasad from Sri Venkateswara University or Padmavati University from Tirupati used to provide solutions to many places, like in Gujarat and many other places, where in the dry places where he used to find waters, water bodies based on these pramanas. This was in the 80s and 90s. Now he is no more. So this particular knowledge is still valid, and because there is certain vegetation, the certain plant biomes, there is a relation between plant biomes and the water bodies that is available, and also the soil biome, lithosphere. This particular knowledge has been utilized for understanding the presence of groundwater. Similarly, there is a certain uh, discussion on the soil classification system. So Sitarakta, Pita, Krishna, these are the different varnas of soils or colors of soils. So based on the colors of the soil, and similarly based on the smell of the soil and taste of the soil, the plants are divided into, and also the presence of different plant varieties, right? The soils are divided into. So it appears that there is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Nevertheless, this perhaps meaning that the utility of the spaces or utility of the soils for different purposes. For example, if you want to create a space which is actually regenerates your mind, which regenerates your thought process, so the Shvetavarna is ideal, right? And similarly, the Raktavarna, the red soil or the laterite soil, which contains high iron oxides. You will see, many places where mountainous regions, etc. You will see that there is a iron oxides dominant, something like this, the laterite soil, red in color. So if you have this particular soil, then the contractor will be very happy, because this is abundantly available, and this particular soil could be used for achieving a very good compaction. So you can go to very high compaction energy and then achieve very high densities. So this particular soil is good for creation of even large structures. So there is a kshatriya where protection systems, etc. are required. So you can create perhaps large structures. Similarly, this is a widely available land. There's a Pita Varna and Krishna Varna, which is related to the planting and other things which are there is a krishi, and similarly there is a creation of pots, etc. So the chlorith is directly are dependent on this particular soil. So this is a utility of soil that actually talked about. And in fact, there are many other ways to classify the soils, because soils do not mean just presence of grains and soil or water. That is a modern perspective of soil. But soil means there are certain microbiomes. So these are from plant biomes also there are certain microbiomes that are available within the soils, and also there are certain micronutrients. These are all useful for nourishing bodies, physique, everything. So therefore, there is a direct relation between the type of soil we are living in and the way we behave. So the soils definitely would influence us, and that is how the classification has been done. And many a place I do teach this particular course on Indian knowledge systems. Many a times people ask me, is it really a scientific approach of dealing with classification or any other thing? I explain one thing, the pramanas are something like this. If you have uh, one bird and which is flying at 2 kilometers away from the water bodies, and suddenly it sees that there is a small perturbation in the water body, and then it actually dives down and then catches its prey. Right? It dives down to 2 kilometers and then to catch the prey. Did it see the prey? It's not possible. Even the cameraman could not capture the prey before it caught it, right? So it is not possible, only based on the perturbation. The perturbation could be the natural perturbation, or it could be presence of certain prey. So, so these pramanas are so powerful. Similarly, the marine snails, they can detect their food source based on simply the smell of the food, and they would not know where the food is unless until they use their sensing glands. So, but then humans, they have all these senses working, and the utilization of this particular sense organisms is a main theme to understand the knowledge or to acquire the knowledge. What kind of a knowledge? For example, if you are trying to understand what is the type of soil, you ask, the plants because they live in there. So based on the variations that happen to the plants or variations that happen to the living organisms, because the color is because of the minerals that are present in the soil, and the smell taste is because of the type of microorganisms that are present in the soil, bacteria, fungi, all these things. So they actually provide the actual information, so based on these sense organisms. So that is more powerful than utilizing certain kind of instruments to detect and to understand what type of soil it is. To understand the contrast what we are currently using in soil mechanics to detect the type of soil or something, I'll just briefly mention that soil is considered as a particulate matter, what I just mentioned. That means there are particles, and in between you have either air or water. That's it, right? Until this is actually derived from Da Vinci, and we have Coulomb has actually derived from Da Vinci, and then given the friction laws. That is a major basis for the existing soil mechanics currently. And these are two-phase systems until 1950s or 60s. Only solids and air has been used, right? And then three-phase system has been introduced only very recently. That is hardly 1963, but a complete understanding is still not available because the shear strength over a wide range of moisture content is still not known. So how do we get this two-phase or three-phase system? Simple. You take the soil from the field, put it in oven, and heat it up to 105 degrees Celsius for 24 hours. Then you take out the soil, then do any experiment. That means you are killing all the microorganisms. You are not really giving any dam to the micronutrients or any other thing. You are only interested in the solids and air or water. That's it. So then you evaluate using this particular testing equipment, and you evaluate what type of soil it is. So this is a PISA tower. PISA tower was constructed in 2-3 phases. So in the initial phase itself, where the soil was not properly detected under this. There was a 10-meter thick clay deposit beneath the Pisa Tower, which was not properly detected. So because there were very rudimentary soil evaluation techniques or classification techniques, so they were not able to understand the type of soils even during 12th century, if you can understand, from the graph itself. So in the initial phase of construction, so this was a brick wall and this whole thing got collapsed. So therefore this got collapsed, so they started putting more weight on this side. So that's why it gave a banana structure. But if you see any structure during that period itself, like it could be a subterranean structure like Rani Ki Vav or Brihadishwara temple, etc., they are still standing tall, even they are situated very close to Kaveri river or something, deltaic plains, right? That means the soil classification are the pramanas which were very, very strong, which were utilized to understand the type of soil and what kind of a load can be put on the soils. Even now, the three-phase system or two-phase system are very difficult to deal with because there is no inclusion of microbial activity, micronutrients. And if you include, it becomes a five-phase or six-phase system, and God knows when this will be able to solve. And some of the ancient structures currently they are based on this particular knowledge system that are available even now. The first one is this Anangpur Dam. This Anangpur Dam is situated near Delhi in Faridabad, and you have this Aravalli Mountains. Near foot of the Aravalli Mountains, you have this particular dam that has been created nearly thousands years ago. The interesting aspect is that all these aspects have been considered in this. The reservoir planning, site selection, material selection, dam type, etc. Dam type is gravity dam, and where quartzite stones have been nicely chiseled and then put there. And also, this is the cross section and plane view of this particular dam. This is about more than 100 meters length, and the thickness is about 20 meter and height is about 12 meters. So this is the dam and it has holes. These are the holes, and through which you can actually put the sluice gates and then control the water body depth on either side. On the upstream side, you can control the water body levels. So for that, these water channels have been given, and these are the sluice gates. And this is the currently existing dam structure which is intact. These are the quartzite stones, and you have mortar as well. This mortar survived for more than 1,000 years, right? So imagine a structure which was built in 1,000 years ago. What is the the revenue that would have generated if the 1,000 years this particular dam would have been used? So huge revenue, right? Because currently whatever the dam that is existing, beyond 100 years you will not see that particular dam existing, because what we are currently using is the concrete as mortar. The concrete or cement has an age of about 80 years. Beyond that, it is not useful. It cracks, right? So therefore, the life of any given hydraulic structure currently is maximum is 100 years. Beyond that, it doesn't have a life. But here, the life is even beyond 1,000 years. And if you see the factor of safety signals to overturning, sliding, etc., that means the stability of the dam, which is very high. Of course, this is based on the limit equilibrium techniques that has been evaluated. Currently, we are using the earthquake prone related things, etc., to see what exact factor of safety would have been. Because this is a near Delhi region, that means a very high earthquake zone area. Therefore, those factors also could be considered. That is how this is actually standing tall even now. This is the satellite data of the present dam area, the upstream area, which shows that the capacity to hold water, the catchment area is about 10.4 kilometer square, huge area. That is a catchment area where it actually draws the water from, right? But currently, unfortunate situation is that currently, this is whole thing is like a settlement, human settlement. So this is the Anandpur Dam, and on the upstream side, these are the mountains, and this is the occupation or the human settlements. So they were unknowingly sitting on a treasure, that's what I need to say. Because where the groundwater levels are depleting, where they were fighting for the water and they were sitting on this, and unknowingly that this can provide a good source of water if this particular thing is in operation. So another one is the Kalanai Dam, which is again more than 2000 years old, created by Cholas. If you look at the dam height, this is very interesting. Dam height is only 5 meters. Uh, Tall is only 5 meters. And earlier the dam, Anandpur Dam, is only 12 meters. So please pay attention to these dam heights. Dam heights are always kept low in our ancient India, right? So this is a even in operational even now on Kaveri River. And let us review what the current status of some of the dams what we have. This is a Sardar Sarovar Dam. I've simply taken from Google, I mean Wikipedia. In 1999, when this was constructed, the height is 88 meters. In contrast to what the dams were there earlier dam, this is a very huge height because it generates power as well, electricity as well. So 88 meters, but over a period of time of around 10 years, the height of the dam had to be increased to 138 meters. So look at the planning that has been done before the creation of this particular space. Because of the continuous increase of the height of a particular dam, there is a huge environmental impact. Because one thing is, as I mentioned, there's a depletion of the groundwater on the downstream side, which actually creates the water is the ocean water, seawater to intrude into your groundwater space, and this will make the space to be unutilized for any farming or any other thing, because the salt water enters into your body, groundwater body, right? That actually created a huge environmental impact. If you even see the huge dams like Three Gorges Dam, which also has a similar impact on the environment, huge environmental catastrophe, the creation of these particular dams. Second thing, these dams are made up of concrete. So wherever you see the creation of this particular carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide emissions are directly related to the amount of production of cement or concrete. So China tops because China produces the most of the quarrying and transport, and then this clinker was produced by the China, and it tops in the production of the CO2 emissions as well. So this is at huge cost, environmental cost, what we are creating these spaces. And the longevity, what I said, beyond 80 years, this cracks. So you have to be careful that this particular dams will not be useful beyond that. So now a new practice has come, new profession has come, that is undamming the rivers. So you have to demolish the concrete structures. If the life is actually nearing, then it has to be demolished. So there are experts who can demolish this. And this particular waste called construction and demolition waste, which constitutes to about 10 to 20% of the municipal solid waste, creates a huge environmental problem. First thing and foremost thing, apart from the heavy metals, it also produces high ionic strength salts, which is coming to our food cycles and which is very harmful. And so these leachates that are produced from this particular thing is actually contaminating the groundwater. So this is a huge environmental impact currently what we are facing. And this undamming, what I said, this is at the what rate the undamming is happening, you can see this. So nearly in 2010, in 2010s, that means 2010 to 2020, these many number of dams have been demolished. So this is the height of the dam that are shown. So because the age is over. So age of the removed dams are also shown. So this is the contrast what I want to show, and also the water conservation systems at the foothills of Aravalli have shown, and this is at the shores. This was created by Chhatrapati Shivaji in 17th century. This is called Sindhugad Fort. And very interestingly, this is at the seashore. That was at the foot of the Himalayas, foot of the Aravalli mountains, where the water was actually coming down and where it was tapped and which was used for serving the society. And this was a last point where it actually culminates into the sea, where it was tapped and which was actually a reservoir has been created. So such reservoirs were existing many even now. They're in operational. Some of them are not maintained well, so therefore they are not operational. So these are all in Maharashtra, near border to the sea. And similarly in Mandu, this is on the hillock. So very interesting aspect, in fact, you can draw similar things and apply for current, scenarios in hilly regions or mountainous regions. So Mandu, this is around 550 CE. So more than 1200 tanks are available. So these tanks are interconnected. So the water actually flows from one tank to another, and these are amazing structures that are available in Madhya Pradesh currently to see, right? And this is one of the very interesting structures called subterranean structures. So this is the ground level. Below the ground level, they have created spaces. So this is called Rani Ki Vav in Patan in Gujarat. And near this is Chandbori, Rajasthan, similar space and slightly different. I'll try to explain in a bit. And similarly, you have similar things in even in South India. This is called Nagakunda in Karnataka. Similar space is available for reaching the groundwater and also recharging the groundwater and also kind of a water harvesting system. It works in all different ways. So this is a cross-sectional plan of the Nagakunda. And this is Nadavari Koneru in Kanjipuram near Vardaraja Swami temple. So similar kind of a subterranean structure exists. So this is in Rajasthan, Chandbawadi, as I mentioned, this extends to 30 meters below the ground surface from the ground level. And I'll try to explain the interesting aspects of Rani Ki Vav and what engineering marvel that existed in those days. This is about 1000 years old, 11th century. This was created by Bhima, King Bhima, Chalakyas. The Chalakyas were actually built. In fact, the Nadavari Koneru and other Nagakunda in Karnataka also by the Chalakyas. So this is the structure that I have built with 7 stories that are available, and these galleries are, people can go there, and then also, for example, if the water level is changing, they can reach to different galleries to take out the water. And these are not water bodies, I guess, just to get the water for the daily use, because they used to have normal wells. Every household used to have a well, or at least so many number of wells. So this is not for daily use. Perhaps this has a utility for larger water conservation project that was intended for. And the very interesting aspect is that near to this, there was a Saraswati river used to be there during that time. And when Saraswati was flowing, what is the need for construction of this particular space? That is also an interesting aspect which has to be seen. Whether this intended purpose was that in long term this should serve. And here what you see is that both sides you have retaining walls to retain the soil. And on one side, on the farthest side, you see that there is an arch type thing which is constructed by bricks. The side walls are by stones, and there is sandstone, and this arch type one is by bricks, right? So this is a tank at the farthest place. So this is a cross section below the ground, how this actually is existing currently. You have to go down like this to reach to around 30 meters where you can fetch the water in the dry period. Otherwise water levels can change in different times. So these are the dimensions of this particular Rani Ki Vav space. Around 30-meter length and 21-meter width, and depth here also around 30 meters, right? So these are some of the pictures, and orientation is given very highest preference. In fact, highest priority in when spaces have been created. So this is Modhera Sun Temple nearby, created by again the Chalakyas during the same period. And this particular temple faces exactly towards east, exact east, geographical east. Similarly, the Rani Ki Vav is also facing east, right? And there's one interesting aspect in this orientation. There's a mention in one of the Vastu Ratna Shilpa, or some one book, when there's mention Prasade Sadane Linde Dware Kunde Visheshata Dik Mode Kurunashasyar. Dik has been given a very good importance in all these Prasada, Sadana, etc., the creation of these spaces. And what we recently see in Anantapadmanabha Swami temple also, during the equinoxes, during the sunset, the sun passes through these 7 windows at different interval and it sets. This happens only one particular day or 2 days in 1 year, only during the equinoxes, during March 21st. Another thing is maybe during the other equinox day, that is June 21st or something. So other times it will not happen. So that means that this particular temple is oriented towards the geographical east, not the magnetic east. So often we think that, okay, we know the directions very well using the magnetic compass, but the compass gives you only the magnetic field direction, but not the geographical east or geographical north. So this has to be evaluated in a different fashion. That knowledge is there with us. So why the direction has been given a very important aspect? Perhaps I understand that, if you see the bee community, certain bees, they go out and then fetch the food source, that is a nectar, to the hive, and they communicate in dance language. They actually make a dance and they show the amount of food source that is available as well as the direction at which the food source is available. So this is through a dance language that's called waggle dance, and this particular direction, what it follows is the sun's direction, that is the geographical east-west line, that particular direction it uses. So similarly, there was in fact this particular concept received a Nobel Prize to an Australian scientist for evaluating this particular, what is this particular thing that is actually dance form, etc. And in fact, they have done interesting experiments when later on that they closed this artificial hive entrance to see whether it made a mistake after some time, because sun changes its angle with time, 4 degrees per minute. So after half an hour, if you open the hive, they thought that bees would make a mistake and they would stick to their old direction or something, but they didn't. They also changed the positions, they also change the directions. That means without seeing the sun also, it knows the path of the sun. Similarly, when we construct the space also, we are mentally in connection with the cosmos or space, and we are aligned to that particular space. Perhaps that is the reason that they have given a very important importance, and this is done using Diksadhana or Shanku Yantra. In most of the astronomical texts are Jyotisha Granthas and as well as the Vastu Granthas mention about this Diksadhana. This is a very important aspect. This is called a Noman or Shanku Yantra, which is often used, where Shinku is acted and the shadows which are casting on this particular circle, the circle should be of the radius larger or equal to this particular height of this particular Shinku has been made, and this is called Indian circle method. Wherever this particular the shadow of this particular gnomon casts on the circle during the day and during the afternoon when it leaves, this particular thing, if you connect, you will get a straight line that should actually tell you the east-west line. But as sun changes its position with time, sun, because there is a particular inclination that the earth makes 33.5 degrees, we actually expect there is certain error. Therefore, one particular day, if you do it, you will get an accurate value, that is solstices, summer solstice and winter solstice. Other days, they have given certain correction factors. I will not go very detailedly. So most of the temples actually have this phenomenon where this is called Rashistambhas in the Makhamandapa. These are not to just support the whole structure, but also where sun rays fall on this particular individual Rashistambhas when sun is in one particular Rashi. So this is based on these particular analysis. I will not go very detailed because I need to discuss few more things. So accuracy, I just wanted to mention here. The accuracy is when less than a degree, few minutes. That accuracy is required for creation of the orientation or placing the orientation of for a given structure. Right? For example, if you take say one particular day, January and then November, generally the sun passes through the same position, but there is slight change, only few minutes change. That few minutes also taken consideration when creation of the space is done. So that is what is very important aspect. So that's why from the satellite, if you see the Google Earth, when I do this, the accuracy is so accurate. This is a geometrical northwest line or north-south line, and this is the east-west line. This is exactly oriented. That whatever the small change, 0.7 degrees, whatever the change you see, that is not because of the variations. It could be one, this is 3D picture, not 2D picture. That could make some error. And also this was built several years ago, several hundreds of years ago. So therefore, this particular orientation is also changing. Earth orientation is also changing. That would have been changing slight deviation in the angle. So therefore, Rani Ki Vav is also in the orienting in the same Prachi or the east-west line, just like our other temples. So that means here water is worshipped, just like the way we worship other gods. So Varunadeva has been worshipped in this particular Rani Ki Vav, where the importance you can understand given that is given for the water. So there are two retaining structures on either side, because whenever you excavate something, whenever you try to excavate something, the soil will fall off. So you require certain retaining structures. How to erect these retaining structures? Because if you need to excavate, the soil will fall off. So therefore, retaining structures are required. To erect the retaining structures, you need to excavate, because the retaining structures can be kept from bottom to top only. Because if you start putting from here, then after that next layer, that's how you can build. That means erection has to be made before. Excavation has to be made before. How this particular situation would have been handled, that I'll try to discuss. And the material selection, like stones, generally the stones are also selected based on the pramanas. As I mentioned, the Pratyaksha Pramana, etc. So the sound, they actually take certain tools and they actually make a strike on the rock, and they'll observe the sound. Based on the sound, they divide the rock into whether this is useful for the placing at the bottom or placement at the top or placement at, placing as a pillars or anything that is decided based on that, which is given color, age, gender, everything. Similarly, the mortar preparation, brick preparation, all these things are available in all the prominent Vastu books, including Samarangana Sutradhara. As I was mentioning, soil retention is when you excavate, there is a pressure that increases with depth. So therefore, soil collapses just like this. If you excavate something, right? Excavate deeper, then it collapses. So generally, what we do in the present situation, that we'll put some kind of a reinforcement into it, and then after that we excavate, and then put horizontal bracing system, and then excavate further, put bracing system, something like this, to create the vertical space. But even then, it collapses if there is a presence of groundwater table. But then here, the Rani Ki Vav is to reach to the groundwater table or reach to the groundwater source. Then how this could have been managed? And there were even several damages that have taken place in recent past. This is in Singapore. So a few people died also. This is called shoring system collapse. Because if the earth pressure is not properly estimated, these shorings will fail. Then it will collapse the entire thing. So if you see the dimensions of it, the depth is similar, 30 meters only. Similar to what Rani Ki Vav is. That is also 30 meter deep. How they would have excavated thousands of years ago? That is a question. And we cannot put any reinforcement, something like this, because these reinforcements based on steel or something would not last so long. So this is a methodology I was trying to explain how they would have made based on the knowledge of Vastu. So if this is the cross section, what they would have done is they would have excavated all four sides, something like this, and then after that they would have mobilized the materials like stones, and the stones would simply roll down. So then after that they would have provided this bracing. Where is the bracing here? These are the galleries. These galleries are supporting these retaining walls, right? And they would have backfilled on either side. Again, they would have extended further, and they would have created the space something like this. But this is at one cross section because the depth is varying along this length. So carefully they would have done this particular thing all along the length. So then this particular space has been created. Further, there is a buttress. These buttress walls on either side they would have provided, similar to what you see for the trees. Trees, they will have buttress roots to provide strength against the winds. Otherwise, they would fall off, right? So similarly, to protect these retaining structures on either side, there is a buttress wall that has been provided using the sandstone. And wherever these buttress walls are there, so you will see that the gallery is connected. This is a bracing system or shoring system, right? This is a beautifully executed work, and here at the top, huge pressures would be coming. So if you want to create a thin wall, instead of using stone, they could use simply the bricks. So brick wall has been created, thin brick wall, and when you provide an arch, these forces would be transmitted at the end. There they provided a very large retaining structures, massive gravity walls. These gravity walls actually transferring the particular load back to the foundation. So this is how the whole space has been created. One last slide. So this is a temple which is existing in Assam called Jaisagar. So this is the satellite view of the temple. The temple is located here, the point where my cursor is showing. And there are huge tanks called Baitepahar tank and Napukri tank. This is built by Ahoms. Ahoms, they ruled for several centuries. And what interesting aspect that strikes here is that the creation of tirthas are the water bodies in every temple. So this could be one of the mechanism, or this could be one of the reasons why these tirthas have been created. And Assam is known for severe earthquakes. We receive earthquakes very often. Now we are used to even the tremors what we receive very often. There is one earthquake called 1897 earthquake with a magnitude of 8.2, a very high magnitude, where Brahmaputra river changed its course because of that particular high magnitude earthquake. Every structure got flattened. But this particular temple called Shivdol, Vishnudol and Shaktidol stand tall even after that. So one interesting aspect is that why these particular tanks are existing. When I went for one particular site visit, one of the ASA, Archaeological Society of India person has called me to see the settlements of Maidams. What I observed is that there is a particular soil, one particular soil which is actually colored like a black cotton soil. I told him that this is an expansive soil and these water tanks have certain relation with the foundations of these temples. So these tanks should be always filled with water and it should not be dried off. And in fact, such a mechanism was existing also. Nearby there are other tanks. If this water tank is actually depleting water, then those tanks actually would fill this particular tank. That means the tank should be always filled with water. That is a mechanism they had put. And in 2014, they actually given these particular tanks for fisheries. So they emptied these tanks. What they observed is huge vertical cracks along this length of this tank, right? And immediately this was stopped by the ASA person saying that this should not be emptied because it seems the water tanks are related to the foundation of this particular structure. So when the earthquake strikes, the S wave or the shear waves propagate. For water, the shear wave is 0. Otherwise, if you take soil, the shear stresses exist because two different forces can exist in different directions. But water, the force all along the directions are same. So there is no shear. So these water bodies are actually compensating the earthquake load that is coming in. So therefore it survived. Here, whatever the slight tilt what you see is because of the human intervention, not the earthquake. Because when they emptied the water, this particular temple tilted towards the tank this side when the crack appeared. So when the water was filled back into the tanks, these cracks also filled back. This was cited. Why I wanted to mention here is that again the same pramanas based on the color, perception, taste, etc. You can understand what type of soil was existing and what would happen to the buildings. That is again based on the pramanas. So just a few takeaway points. Sustainable water resource management in ancient India existed, and that definitely offers a very good solutions at present to all of us. And I acknowledge idatra saushtavam kinchit tad gurureva me nahi, idatra saushtavam kinchit tanme maiva gurur nahi. With this, I thank IKS Indian Knowledge System Division MOE for sponsoring our projects, and also I have two PhD students working in Indian knowledge systems. In fact, the first student Abhishek Chandelier is from MA Sanskrit background, literary background. He's working on pramanas only, the soil classification system, etc. And R Krishna is working on. She's from computer science background. She's working on the navigation. So thank you so much. I can take any questions if you have.
Yeah. So I want to understand the difference between geographic east and the magnetic east.
Okay.
Yeah.
The magnetic east direction is based on the magnetic field. For example, if you take a compass can give you the magnetic east, right? But geographical east is slightly different from the magnetic east. That is not, both are not same. For a given location, the geographical east is also fixed and the magnetic east is also fixed, but both vary, differ. It's not Uttarayana Dakshinayana. It is not going to the northern direction or southern direction.
Okay, yeah, that was the confusion, because when you said two east, two ways of determining the east. So how far are they from each other?
They differ by even 11 degrees sometimes to few 1 degree, 2 degrees also, depending on the location where you are in. One thing, there is one particular subject called archaeoastronomy that is completely dependent on this, because based on this archaeoastronomical principles, what we could do, for example, there is a temple that is built 1000 years ago using particular orientations. This is Prachi, or the geographical north-east lines, east-west lines. Now currently if you see, that geographical east-west lines will be slightly different from that particular orientation. Like currently the Sringeri temple. Sringeri temple, the sun rays directly don't pass on to the Rashistambhas. There is a slight deviation that has happened. Because when it was built 1000 years ago, that used to fall on these stambhas. Now it will not fall anymore, because there is a slight orientation that got changed. Because Earth, it actually is inclination, it is having an inclination of 23.5 degrees, right? But that itself changes. That is not constant. So what you could do, based on this particular deviation, you can determine when this temple was built. This is called archaeoastronomy. Currently we have one project also where we are evaluating certain temples in Kashi and Ujjain. The timeline can be determined based on the orientations itself.
I was wondering if the last temple that you mentioned with the two tanks that are supposed to mitigate the effects of earthquakes, I mean, are you in the process of preparing some sort of a diagram that can explain it visually?
Yes, actually we got the samples also. We got the samples collected from this particular place also. And also we have the cross-sectional views and the borehole depth also. Like borehole data is provides you the soil variation with depth or soil features with depth up to 12 meters or so. So we are doing an analysis with you know synthetically creating earthquake simulations, and then how this particular ground response takes place and ground acceleration takes place. These things we are currently doing. I have another student who is from civil engineering only. He is currently working in these areas, I mean, in these places. So he actually got the sample also for me. Otherwise, getting a sample is very difficult for me because these are all very religious places where they would not allow anyone to actually dig or do anything.
The 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 masonry that is done for the I mean tanks, built tanks. How are they? What is the motor that was used, or was motor used at all, or was it dry stacked? How does it work?
No, actually, my understanding or my hypothesis, I'll tell you my hypothesis only because
Mm-hmm.
it's not proven yet. My hypothesis is that generally when you take the soil,
Mm-hmm.
this is an expansive soil, it's called. Expansive soil means when water comes, it will try to expand a little bit. If you take away the water, it will crack. Actually, cracks appear because volume reduces or it shrinks. Generally, we don't construct anything on such soils unless until this is stabilized. But my guess is that they would have chosen this particular soil intentionally and they would have kept this particular soil continuously saturated throughout the period because we have seen in sand or any other soil. You are from architecture, I'm sure you know what is sand and what is clay. In sands, when the earthquake strikes, the pore pressures increases significantly. Because of that, the effective stresses become zero. So therefore, the structures would sink. So most of the damages that happen is because of the presence of uniform sand or high water tables. But here, it's a clay earthquake. Even if it strikes, these tanks are actually stabilizing these earthquake forces or the shear wave forces. So that's how these are all designed, I believe. That has to be proven. Otherwise, it is like a simple analogy only I'm giving.
So I was asking, what kind of motor was used in Anapur Dam?
Motor, acha, motor. Okay, these motors are organic. Even interestingly, the same motor existed in a home's construction and in Anandpur and elsewhere. This consists of good, tripala, lime, and ghee, all these organic components, and they lasted for several years. And the reaction that happens between these materials is very interesting. This is documented in Brihat Samhita and many other Vastu books. Same mortar has been used everywhere, but the proportions are not known. The composition, I mean, the components are known. What is the composition of individual thing is not yet known. We have done some experiments. We got somewhere 4 MPa, 5 MPa in some cases. We got very few MPa kilopascals in few cases. So depending on the composition, the strength would vary for these things. And they will use also urad dal. What you use it for the idli making, same lentils.
Sir, I was wondering, for the purpose of modern construction, would this mortar be sustainable?
So if they sustain for thousands of years, why not?
No, sir, as in modern day construction involves mass production. There's a lot more construction happening than in the ancient era.
See what happened, the construction of say for example Rani Ki Vav took place for 20 years, but it survived for thousands of years and it will survive for some more years. Modern day techniques, you want a very fast thing, you have to construct something within 1 year or less than 1 year, but it hardly lasts for 60 years or so. If you want something with very high longevity, I think we need to invest more. Rather, maybe another option is that you use the 3D printing and all such technologies and use the modern equipment combined with these ancient technology would help in fastening this process, right? But this is more sustainable, that is sure, because The mortar itself is completely organic. Even if it degrades later on, after some more years, this will actually get absorbed into the atmosphere, the environment naturally. So whatever the current materials what we use, like concrete or cement or any other thing, they actually are producing mostly this carbon dioxide. But these materials are carbon neutral, are moreover negative carbon. They absorb the carbon dioxide. That is the best part of it.
I believe those are the questions for now, Bharat. And we do hope you can come here at some point in time. And I
Definitely.
hope, yes,
Anyways, I'm also from South India. Whenever I visit that side, definitely I will take an opportunity to come over there and then meet you all.
yes, I think that would be the perfect opportunity then.
Yeah,
We,
thank you so much. Yeah, it was
we,
wonderful to
we,
talk to you all.
we are also grateful. I mean, in fact, all the sessions that we've had today, they've all opened doors in different directions, Bharat. I mean, we've just come to know that there is so much, so much more, and so many more avenues to be explored,
Right.
to be studied. So
Best
I
thing is
think
that we all need to come together because we are expert in one area, but we don't know anything in other area. So
this has been amazing. I mean, very, very, I know. It sort of kindles your curiosity and you're left wanting for more. I guess that is what will spur us to do more work in our chosen area, of course.
right, right.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Bharat.
so much.